Today I'm going to show you guys one of the hardest models that I've ever built and that I've ever painted. So for anybody that follows me on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook or anything like that will know that recently I've been working on a creature caster model. I got it sent from America as part of a commission, and it's something that was probably the biggest commission I've done so far in my very short-term career of being a commission painter. I was super excited to get this model started and I couldn't wait for it to arrive, and as soon as it came I realised what a massive task this would be. For example, here is a Poxwalker against the massive base that this model resides on. So from looking online and looking at the way that this model goes together and some of the artwork for it, I knew it was going to be a big job. Being honest, looking back, I definitely underquoted for this job. It took a hell of a lot of time. I think we're talking somewhere between 60 hours of painting, maybe 20 hours of building and modelling and sculpting. I kind of want to show you guys some of the progress pictures of what I've done and how I got to the end result. Unfortunately, due to time constraints over Christmas, I couldn't record any of the footage to show you me actually painting it. But what I'm going to do is kind of go through the pictures and show you exactly what I did and kind of give you an example of how this came together and hopefully give you a little bit of insight into whether you want to do something like this yourself. So if you haven't already, you should go back and check out my unboxing video from the Creature Casters box that I received. It was really cool. I enjoyed seeing all the parts and how it was going to go together, but to be honest, straight away opening the box and looking at the amount of parts and realizing it was like a fine cast sort of resin type, and knew there was going to be issues with the build straight away. Not with the quality, but with actually putting it together. So having looked on the Creature Caster website, there is actually a guide of how to build this. So I kind of went on the website, had a look at the video that they've got on there on the website to build it, and decided the best way to do this, to build it and to be able to paint it and be able to keep that sort of level of detail that I wanted, would to be build it into subsections. So I decided to build it into 4 subsections, mainly the body itself of the Queen of Malifica, and then the rock sort of stonework behind her, the wings, and then the base as well, the tentacles and the demon part of it. Keep all those separate as they're going to be different base colours. One of the things that was explained on the Creature Casters YouTube video was that some of the parts warp, whether it's been in travel or in your house, hot and cold or whatever. But basically the material that this is made out of makes them warp, and sometimes it makes them not fit together. And I noticed there was a hell of a lot of joints where this just didn't fit together. And some of the parts of the resin had bubbles in it as well, where there was mold lines. So removing the mold lines released bubbles, which needed to then be kind of filled in as well. So just use some milliput and some sculpting tools. But there was a hell of a lot of gaps, especially on the base. The base itself, the tentacles, are so interwoven, and the way that it all works together, if one area touches and the other area is slightly bent, it will affect the whole thing. So it was a case of shoving it where it would go, heating it up with a bit of a heat gun or over a radiator, bending it to where it needed to be, gluing it, and then hoping something else would fit, and eventually just plugging the gaps and sculpting some free-handed tentacles to cover the gaps. So as you can see from these stills, like the amount of milliput that I had to put in between some of the joints on this was quite ridiculous. There was a hell of a lot of time sculpting and moulding, which I didn't anticipate with this model, but it did make the model look better overall. I didn't want to leave it in a bit of a state. So with that done, I primed it using Vallejo matte black primer, and then using a white ink I gave it a zenithal highlight. And immediately I noticed the amount of detail that was in this model, and that's something like you've got to commend Creature Caster for. This model is full, packed to the brim with detail. But this was also a bit of a daunting experience as well, noticing the amount of work that was to be taken on, and then trying to fit it in the time frame as well. Bearing in mind this came from America, you've got a strict time frame to kind of adhere to, especially over the holiday period, was going to be quite a task. But I was excited to get started on this amazing model and see what I could come up with. So during this painting process, I experimented with the eyes a little bit as well, and I got quite a lot of comments over on Instagram asking me how I'd done it. And to be fair, it's a simple painting of an eyeball and then using gloss varnish over top of it to give it like a shiny effect to the eyeball. But I thought it really brought the piece to life as I was going through and painting these tiny little bits of detail. So the Queen herself received my usual Reikland Fleshshade over Ulthuan Grey for the flesh tones. And then I used contrast paint to give it a bit of a gold effect, non-metallic metal, around some of the parts and some of the detail. I made sure that I used some of the Thousand Suns colours that I was asked to use throughout this commission to kind of tie it in with the army. and also made her look more human than demon. And then using a few techniques, I sort of highlighted the gems using a non-metallic metal sort of layering effect to make bright gems, again using the gloss varnish. The overall result was exactly what the client asked for. It was a humanoid demon character, god if you like, that was representative of Tzeentch. While still being a demon, it still retained its humanity. I really liked some of the techniques that I used on here, and it was a perfect centerpiece for this overall model. Using similar layering and blending techniques, I then started working around the gems around the miniature. Again, I didn't want to use technical paints, I wanted to paint this using layering, and the overall effect with the gloss varnish on top was perfect. The back plate was probably what took the most time. You can see the amount of details between the two here. It was base coated in Zandri Dust and then layered up from there, and as you can see, the time and effort it took to get every single piece, with the one on the right finished and the one on the left not even started. You're talking at least 20 hours just on this single piece, and that's both sides. Starting on the bottom piece, you can see here, this is just one of the tentacles, tendrils, whatever you want to call it, that was wrapped around the base part. And the amount of eyes and teeth and detail that had to go into this, especially on such a miniature scale, was time consuming, but the overall effect that it gave was brilliant, and it really spurred me on to get the rest of the model finished. During the base, I got to a point where I thought I'd never get finished, so I started putting some of the model pieces next to each other just to see the overall effect, because painting individual things, you just don't see it as you're going along. And I took this picture and I was just like, yeah, do you know what, this is actually going to be sick when it's finished. The wings, the back piece, the model itself, it was all starting to come together, and it was a nice moment. So with the rest of the model just waiting for a base, I had to kind of get my stuff together and tackle it. And the amount of eyes on this base, I think I counted over 200 eyes on the base or something stupid. So that's a lot of paint, a lot of layering, a lot of trying not to make mistakes over where you've already been, and the teeth was even more than the eyes. But the overall effect of what I got when the base was done and the tentacles just really finished off the monster. As the model was being put together with the 4 sub-assemblies painted, I started noticing, again, as I knew I would do from building this previously, there was gaps forming. Gaps in the build where it just didn't quite join. So it was a case of, again, getting the milli put out, filling these gaps, re-sculpting it, and then repainting it to kind of mould it in so it seems seamless. It's, I think, a problem with all fine cast miniatures or miniatures of this sort of high quality. You're going to find that there's going to be gaps in them, unfortunately. But with the last of the gaps filled and painted, it was finally time.
What am I, you ask? Such a curious question. Have you not been seeking knowledge, seeking power? You have found it, mortal, for I am knowledge and I am power. I am the path you have been walking, and I am the beacon that draws you. I am the reef in shallow waters, and the flame that burns the moth. I am your past and your future. But really, you should not be so concerned with what I am, mortal. No, your concern should be that I am here. That I am here and that you have invited me. What should really concern you, mortal, is that you are mine.
So as you guys can see, this was no easy undertaking. As I've said before, it took me around about 80 hours in total from start to finish to get this model done. And it wasn't a case of just putting this model together and then painting it. It was in subsections, and then even when the subsections were done and painted separately, there were still joint failures and errors everywhere. Now, I'm not saying for a second that this model is a bad model. It's not. It's amazing. And I think if you've got the opportunity to buy one, you certainly should. Currently on the website, it's shown as pre-order only, so I don't even know how this chap managed to get hold of it, but I'm extremely grateful that he sent me this model over for me to commission and paint for him. Hopefully in the future I'm going to get more stuff like this sent to me and I can do more bigger models. I enjoy painting the one-offs. I've been asked recently for quite a lot of commissions to do armies, maybe 20-30 models. It's not something that really interests me. I like doing the one-offs and doing something that's a bit more unique, something like a centerpiece for an army. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this content today, and if you have, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. It really helps out the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and then share the video around with your friends. If you want to see what I'm up to now, you can check out on my Twitter and on my Instagram. And if you want to help and support the channel, you can do so for just £1 or $1 if you're in America. Literally, it will buy me a coffee to keep me awake at night while I'm painting all these dope miniatures. Thanks again for your support, guys. Cheers for checking out the video, and we'll see you next time.
What am I, you ask? Such a curious question.